students, and welcome to another lecture. This lecture will be on unity, variety, and balance. Unity and variety can be difficult concepts to understand in art, so hopefully I can help illuminate the concepts for you by having some good examples. Sometimes you can use a grid, you can have repeating shapes, you can also have thematic, having a series of work where the topic is the same throughout all the images. So hopefully you'll pick that up as we go along. And then balance, which can be a little bit easier. We're going to cover the three different types of balance: symmetrical balance, radial balance, and asymmetrical balance. I'll have examples of all those, and then at the end there'll be a pop quiz to see if you can identify which is which. So please enjoy this lecture, and thank you. In today's lecture, we'll talk about unity, variety, and balance. So here we have balance, unity, and variety. They're part of the principles of design. We're not covering any elements in this lecture. Okay, composition. Composition is one of the biggest parts of two-dimensional art. It's a way to control the viewer's eye, and it's the arrangement of visual elements in the pictorial plane. And it's all about readability, tells a story, a message. Here's two different kinds of unity and variety that you can achieve: calm and chaos. So here we have Vija-Selman's, and this is a picture of unity, oneness, togetherness, cohesion. So this is made out of graphite. It's a picture of the ocean. And as you can see, it's just repeating forms over and over again, getting smaller in the distance to create a sense of the unity in this picture is created by the use of a graphite pencil and the repetition of shapes and values. Also, it has a monochrome tone. Here in this piece by Hannah Hock, we have a variety. So all different kinds of cutouts. This is a collage. All different pictures are cut out, but they achieve a unity through variety. So all these different pictures, they have something in common that connects them all together, even though it looks like a random mess of chaos. Let's take a look at Hokusai's The Great Wave off Kanagawa. So this one is a masterpiece of unity and variety. One of the things that brings unity to this piece is the repetition of shapes. So we have the Mount Fuji in the back, and it has a white top with snow, which mimics a lot of the shapes in the ocean itself. So we have a repetition of shapes that creates a unity. We also have a repetition of stripes and colors in the waves that connect us to the ocean. From variety standpoint, we have this big wave, which is a shape that does not repeat, so it dominates the image. Also, the ships are shaped similarly to the shapes of the waves so that they blend in, create that sense of chaos, that they're getting splashed in the waves. And then we have a beautiful yin-yang balance. A negative and a positive areas are balanced together to create a unity there. So the Japanese artist Hokusai created a unified composition by organizing the repetition of colors, textures, and patterns, even though it's a chaotic scene. Here's Damon Winter. In this one, we have all different irregular glacial shapes, but they're connected by this bluish color. So we have a unity creating by a monochrome palette, unites the picture. Unity can come as conceptual unity, or it can also come as compositional unity. So compositional unity is what we just talked about with the last two pictures. Conceptual unity is when you have a string of pictures that have the same elements repeated in them. So in this one, Van Gogh, he has a certain theory of color and a certain theory of how to apply the paint, the brush strokes. And when you see a Van Gogh, you know it's a Van Gogh because it has those repeating elements, the heavy brush strokes, the bright colors. So there's a conceptual unity that runs through his paintings. Also, the artist Luke Toyman, he does historic painting. A lot of times his images are cut from the news or some sort of media, and then he will represent them in a muted palette so that they will connect together based on the palette and the way that they're painted and the subject matter themselves. Grouping. So we try to impose order and connections. Visual units by location, orientation, shape, and color. So we see certain units in a line, we connect them together. If units are on one side and another, we get a sense that this is one group, or this is another group, or here one group and one group. Proximity, how close are elements to each other? You know, if elements are spaced out, or if they're very, very tight together, there's a sense of closeness or distance. Gestalt. So this is Vishnu dreaming the universe. It's 450 to 500 CE. This is a Hindu sculpture. So the repetition of human shapes in this picture is used to create a compositional unity. We have shapes, 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 shapes. This one is Vishnu, bigger, obviously more important because he's bigger. The religious ideas presented provide profound conceptual unity. So we know that this all relates to the religious idea of Vishnu dreaming up the universe.
These aspects combine together to create a sense of Gestalt, an awakened understanding of the whole. So we see it not as pieces, but as a whole. We understand the narrative in this picture as a whole. Another good example of this would be Chuck Close, who is known for using a grid. A grid is a good way to create unity. So again, Gestalt is the German word for form or shape. It refers to something in which the whole seems greater than the sum of the parts. The composition and ideas that make an artwork and our experience of it combine together to create the Gestalt. So each one of these little squares is just a ring of color, but if you pull back and you see them as a whole, it makes a picture. Right? So it creates a unity in that sense. And there's a video to watch on Chuck Close in the module. But here's another picture of Lyle. This is a close-up on his mouth. As you see, the closer you get, the more it breaks down and the less information you have about what you're looking at. You think it's just an abstraction, but when you pull back, you understand that it is a whole face constructed of these little colored abstractions. So an integrated image that things belong together, things fall apart if it lacks this unity. So if you don't create this unity, it just becomes random and blurry and nothingness. No, the whole needs to dominate over the part. So when you see an individual part, it may not mean anything, but when you put those parts together, it becomes unified. The eye and the brain function. The study of visual perception. We analyze holistically before we analyze individually, the Gestalt theory. So that's the sum is greater than the parts. There's Chuck Close with an earlier painting. He also made these out of the grid. This is made out of a pencil, and he would grid it and just color in the values on a very minute scale. Chuck Close is interesting in that he was face blind, so he was unable to identify faces. And there's a little bit more about that in the video on him. Containment, unifying force created by the outer edge of a composition or a boundary. So just putting a square around something creates a unification in some way. So here we have Atsuko Tanaka's Electric Dress from 1956. This is a performance piece. Tanaka was part of the Gutai group. Gu translates to tool, and Tai translates to body. So it represents the physical methods of many of the group's artists who use their own bodies in their works. So performance art in the 1960s and 70s. Tanaka wore this artwork to exhibit openings. She derived the idea for the work in a neon pharmaceutical sign that would turn on and off sporadically. So as far as compositionally, we have it unified by all these different light bulbs and the wires that hang from them. So we got thick circular bulbs and long bulbs and then thin lines. So there's actually a composition and a repetition of shapes to this strange performance piece. Joseph Cornell, this is conceptual unity, but within a single picture. So part of what connects all this is that everything is a found object. Joseph Cornell combines together these found objects in Untitled, also called the Hotel Eden from 1945. So Joseph Cornell was a surrealist sculptor. His work seemed to suggest mysterious ideas and elusive feelings, diverse shapes and colors, or other characteristics. Things come together in the form of distinctive images. Cornell's works are like a complex game with the viewer, a game that reveals and conceals like a dream, like psychoanalysis. What do these things mean? We're not quite sure, but they maybe do have some sort of narrative that connects together. The ball can't move, the parrot is grabbing this wire. So placed together, the different objects make an idea greater than any one of them could create on its own. This visual complex expression of the artist's personality and methods. Now let's take a look at Romare Bearden. Romare Bearden in The Dove, 1964, creates compositional unity by assembling and organizing the fragments that make up his collage. So at first, the street seems chaotic. The order of the city is reflected in an underlying grid, though, by an implied triangular shape. So let's look here. We have these vertical and horizontals, and then in the center, in this area here, so we have this kind of strong horizontal, and then things kind of build up into this triangular shape. So these are all different organic shapes mixed with these horizontal shapes. So there's a variety of shapes, but together they form a unity that creates this street scene. He wanted to create a feeling of life in Harlem. So the scene is chaotic. We feel the pace of life when we visit the big city. It goes beyond our first impressions. There's another Romare Bearden. And we also have a video in the module on him and how his process works. Let's take a look at Robert Rauschenberg's Monogram from 1955. This is a mixed media piece with a taxidermy goat, a rubber tire, and a tennis ball. So Rauschenberg used a variety to energize his artwork and challenge his viewers. He breached the divide between painting and sculpture. He also took the painting off the wall and put it on the ground. And then combining found objects with it transitions the painting into a sculpture. He used non-traditional art materials and techniques. He challenges the traditional art world with this piece. All things form the painting. The stuffed goat with the tire. The goat is an ancient symbol of male lust. and it's the Christian symbol of souls cast out of salvation, which reflects somewhat what Rauschenberg was. He was a provocateur and an art world. He was an art world. This reflects what Rauschenberg was, which was a provocateur to the art world and a convention breaker. The goat stands on the painting. The painting is the art world icon. And the goat is, you can't see this in the picture, but the goat is defecating on a tennis ball on the painting. So it's almost like he's defecating on the art world. It's a sculpture painting hybrid, and it flies in the face of the art world traditions and morals. When this came out, it really created waves. Rauschenberg was a rebel and reinvented art that was sort of aging and boring to a lot of the critics at the time. Rauschenberg's also known for this piece. It's called De Kooning Erased. So in this one, he takes this picture. Willem de Kooning was a famous abstract expressionist painter. He borrows a drawing from him, and then he just erases it out. And he basically says, I'm erasing art world tradition. I'm erasing one of the giants, and now my artwork is just the erasure of that. Another Rauschenberg piece, Canyon, from 1959, is mixed media with a taxidermied eagle. Again, a variety of objects. This was owned by the estate of an art dealer, but it can't be sold due to the Bald Eagle and Golden Eagle Act of 1940. So this eagle is actually an endangered species, and you cannot sell any taxidermied pieces of this eagle. So it's illegal to sell that. The IRS estimates that this picture is worth $65 million, but the IRS can't do, or the estate cannot sell it. They can only pay taxes on it right now. So they're stuck with that piece. Might as well donate it to a museum. Balance. Let's talk about balance next. Balance is innate. As children, we discover balance. A lack of balance can be unsettling. So balance is the weight of a force within a composition. Positive and negative shapes work together to create an equilibrium among compositional units. Think about the Hakusai piece with the wave and the sky balance, regardless of size, weight, or shape. So a balance pattern tends to have a sense of stability. If we have a line in the center, we expect there to be an equal amount on each side. If there's not, then it creates an unsettling feeling. Here's John Moore's Post and Barrett Newman's, one of his zip paintings. These are the three types of balance that we will talk about in this lecture: symmetrical balance, radial balance, and asymmetrical balance. So these are the way that you can distribute weight among visual units. Let's first talk about asymmetrical balance. This is Ma Yun walking on a mountain path in spring from the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279. It's an ink drawing, also has album leaf and color on silk. So elements in this composition are not distributed evenly because the left and the right sides are not equal. You see that? We have a whole bunch of stuff over here, but we have a lot of empty stuff here. However, Mao Yun counteracts the visual heaviness on the left side by placing the poetic inscription at the top right as a counterweight. So this, which is a different element, writing, balances out this, which is an illustration of a man walking on a mountain path. So we have an asymmetrical balance. Here is a diagram if it's still confusing to you. Asymmetrical balance creates equilibrium among visual elements that do not mirror each other on either side of an axis. So we can have a very dense object, a small dense object, balance a bigger object if this object is closer to the center. If you've been on a seesaw, you know how that works. Or to have a big object, you can balance it out with three smaller objects. Or you can have a small dense object balanced out by a light object, a big object but a light object. Again, a darker, smaller element is visually equal to a lighter, larger one. So this dark, dense one is equal to this lighter, airy one. A small, complicated shape is balanced by a larger, more stable shape. So this square is a stable, understandable shape, whereas this is harder to figure out what it is. It takes more mental capacity. It's a more complex shape, so we get a balance there. A small textured shape can be balanced by a larger untextured one. This one is large and untextured, kind of boring. It's gray. This one, we have some sort of a strange texture. We're not sure what it is. A couple more examples of asymmetrical balance. Alexander Calder, one big shape here balances out a bunch of smaller complex shapes. Alomillo Bridge in Spain, big long shape balancing out the other side. Henry Verviere, Funeral Under Umbrellas, a big empty shape, dark shapes here, complex shapes. The Great Wave, of course. Another Hakusai here, Mount Fuji, this blue cold space balancing out this warm space. Next, let's move on to symmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance is when forms are mirrored on either side of a central axis. This type of artwork is generally physically and visually stable. So we have here the masterpiece of symmetrical balance is the Taj Mahal. Symmetrical compositions, complete balance on either side, balance here. So it's when everything is mirrored. Wes Anderson is a film director who oftentimes will put a symmetrical balance in his movies. Stanley Kubrick as well, who we looked at in the last lecture, he always has symmetrical compositions. There's a picture of The Shining. There's a video to watch on symmetry in films, which you can see in the module. Just a bunch of clips of how symmetry is used. Ed Ruscha
He's a pop artist, a conceptual artist from LA, 1960s, 70s. This is a mirror image that he created, step on no pet. So this is a palindrome. It's the same front and back. The spelling is exactly the same front and back. So it's just a mirror image. See how the mountain is also mirrored? Step on no pets. What does it mean? Audrey Hepburn. This is Audrey Hepburn, who's considered a very symmetrical face. Beauty is considered symmetrical, but actually her face is slightly asymmetrical, because if you were to take one side and put it exactly mirrored on the other side, you'd see that it actually is pretty distorted and weird. Approximate symmetry works much like symmetrical balance, but the elements are slightly different on either side. So you see here, it's similar, but just a little different. Same thing here. We got mostly symmetrical. Something is. Here is the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is a study in pure symmetry. It was commissioned by Shah Jahan, 1592 to 1666. He's the fifth Mughal emperor of India. He did it as a memorial to his third and most beloved wife. She and Shah Jahan were devoted to each other. So he did this as a recognition of their unity, of their love, of the transcendence of power, as a testament to the transcendence of power and timeless love. So in art, symmetrical balance, of course, is the unity of all elements and harmony between them. So we saw this as a stable visual form achieved in this architecture. The Taj Mahal is both bilateral and radial symmetry in the design of the central tomb building. The entire complex includes central mausoleum and 4 minarets, a meeting house, a mosque, 2 pavilions, a gatehouse, 2 plaza areas, and a grand garden, all of which can be bisected to reveal identical components on the opposite side. So it's this symbol of romantic love as well as Mughal wealth. It's carefully planned and designed. There's this idea of the Sharbak, which is central water. It symbolizes the rivers of paradise, as noted in the Quran. So this is the Sharbak, the rivers of paradise. Everything about this design is so careful. 4 minarets stand to call worshipers to prayer, and it has incredible mosaics. When you look up close, you can see that there's all sort of inlay in the stone, which is called pietra dura. It's borrowed from the Italians. It has precious and semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, emeralds from South America, amethyst from Persia, turquoise, agate, coral, among all others, inlaid. It's an incredible feat of engineering, has many, many tourists, and there's also a video to watch on its history if you want to know more. The masterpiece of symmetrical beauty. Finally, let's talk about radial balance. Radial balance is when design elements extend out from a central point, like the spokes of a wheel, radiating in all directions while remaining anchored in the center. So right here we have this mask centered, and then everything expands out from the center. Zach Weinberg square series, these are all laser cut, and each one of these is anchored in the center. Everything extends out from the center. So this is radial, radiates, radial radiates. Radial balance generates energy while retaining its unity. This is an Islamic geometric formation. This is a stained glass window from Notre Dame Cathedral in France. Everything is anchored in the center. As you can see, it generates this energy. Robert Delaney, abstract painter. Alfred Schaller did this radial balance on the bench. This is a mandala. This is a mandala created by Tibetan monks out of sand. It's a great example of radial balance. The monks, they make these out of sand, and they use a variety of colors and shapes, organic and geometric, to unify this. The cool thing about these amatas, which is Buddhist for the long life, it surrounds the central lotus flower. Beautifully and excellently constructed, but it's ephemeral, because when it's done, they wipe it away. They create it and then they wipe it away. So it's basically all about the journey of creating it and then letting it go at the end, which reflects the Buddhist philosophy of life. Here's Ruben's tiger hunt. So radial balance doesn't just have to be circular in, there's another form of radial balance where it can spiral into the center. So we have everything spiraling out of this center point, radial balance. The golden ratio has a center anchored point too. We see this throughout nature. Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity. This was a movie that came out in the 2010s. Sandra Bullock radiating out of the center, all these wires and circular objects. She's in space. Let's look at some alternative compositions as well. An all-over composition by Adeline Harris Sears. This is a quilt. It's not necessarily fits into any of the compositions, although it probably would be symmetrical, but it's just a repeating form over and over again. Imbalance is to create a surreal or unsettling notion or a transition. So in this imbalance, opposed to it to being asymmetrical, it's just imbalanced. There's not a balance to it. It's purposefully breaking the rules. Wabi-sabi is a word that it means imperfection or transience. It's a worldview in Japanese aesthetics, wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi principles include asymmetry, roughness, simplicity, economy, austerity, modesty, intimacy, and the appreciation of both natural objects and the forces of nature. It is often discussed in tandem with a similar aesthetic concept, mono no aware. So asymmetry and wabi-sabi. Pop quiz. What kind of balance is it? If you said symmetrical, you're correct. If you said Asymmetrical, you're correct. If you said asymmetrical, you're correct. If you said radial, you're correct. If you said, trick one, if you said all over composition, you're correct. Oh, look, I think I see a little bunny. It's a funny cartoon. You may notice that when people look at abstract art, they have a hard time not trying to identify shapes or objective objects in them, even though a lot of times the artist just intends them to be abstract. All right, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed both of the lectures, and don't forget to do your discussion. No sketchbooks this week, just discussion, and we will see you again the following week.